Hello, it's your boy, the one and only Sir Patrick, the Department of Biology. Welcome to Lecture 8, Insular Biogeography.
Insular biogeography examines the factors that affect the species richness of certain isolated natural communities. Say, for example, your islands. But first, let's define what an island is. An island is a relatively small area of suitable habitat, geographically isolated. So you need to remember that an island should be geographically isolated from a much larger area. We call that the source, or sometimes we refer to that as the mainland of suitable occupied habitat. So an island is a relatively small area of suitable habitat, geographically isolated from the mainland, which is a much larger area of suitable occupied habitat. So that is usually an island. So as you can see right here, this is me in Tacloban. Tacloban in Visayas, no? UP Visayas Marine Reserve. So we went there and we island hop. But yeah, we seen a lot of miniature island to apply our sense of the, well, we are trying to apply our current course back then was advanced biogeography, and we were trying to determine if certain factors could affect certain distribution of different species. But when we went to Tacloban Island in UP Visayas, in Guimaras, we were trying to examine if there were differences in zonation, no? Across, if you say, for example, this is your island right here, and this is your shoreline right here. We're trying to determine if in that shoreline, if there is a difference in salinity of your of your sand and the soil, no? As you grow across that elevational gradient across the mainland, across the entirety of the island. We were trying to determine if there is difference in salinity, and if that salinity would in turn cause changes in species composition of your plants that you can see in that island. So yeah, we were island hopping. We've seen a lot of mangrove propagules. So yeah. But yeah, we don't use this kind of boat. We were using a motorized boat for that endeavor back then. But yeah, an island is a relatively small area. But I'd like to also mention the article 121 of UNCLOS, no? Or the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, where they state that from Article 121, an island is a naturally formed area of land surrounded by water, which is above water at a high tide. So, from UNCLOS, island is a naturally formed area. Ibig sabihin, kapag man-made yan, hindi yan island. Hindi yan i-consider na island ng UNCLOS. Okay, so island is a naturally formed area of land surrounded by water, which is above water at high tide. So kaya yung man-made island ng China under UNCLOS dito sa sprat list natin ay hindi island, no? So yun yung current stand ng UNCLOS sa mga man-made na na island na gawa ng China. Okay? So under din ng Article 121 ng UNCLOS, rocks which cannot sustain human habitation or economic life of their own shall have no exclusive economic zone or continental shelf. Yun ang kagandahan ng mga islands kasi. So kapag ito yung bansa mo, so kapag this is your country, so yan yung Pilipinas, no? Visayas, Mindanao, no? So kung yan yung country natin, tapos may mga islands tayo dito, somehow na-extend yan yung continental shelf natin at syempre yung EEZ natin. At yun ang kagandahan kapag meron kang mga claimed islands na malayo dun sa mainland mo, no? But yeah, under UNCLOS, kapag rocks lang yan na walang human, na hindi kaya mag-support ng human habitation or economic life, should not be considered as an island. No, hindi yan mo consider as island. But yeah, yan yung konteksto ng island natin dito. No? Yung island natin dito ay I want to start this lecture na ma-prime kayo dun sa idea ng island, no? Na medyo itong ano natin, definition ng island as this is a relatively vague, no? Kasi, 'di ba? It's relatively small area of suitable habitat geographically isolated from the mainland, no? Madami kang sasama at marami ka ding ma-exclude na mga islands kapag ganyan yung definition mo ng islands. Okay ba? Oh well, island dito sa island biogeography. Okay? But yeah, let's use this as a frame of reference when we define an island. And let's also use and bear in mind the idea of island in under UNCLOS, no? The worldwide accepted definition of islands. Well, arbitrarily set by humans. Okay, so if you think about it, if you want to live an islander life, no, if you want to live in an island, well, at first you might enjoy it because you're at the beach, you're drinking coconut, coconut juice, buko juice. You're relaxing, you're swimming, you're enjoying the view. But if you really think about it, and if you experience living in an island for, well, let's say 1, 2, or 3 years after that, well, eventually you will come to a place where you will hate that island. Eventually. Because sometimes you don't have any running current, you don't have plumbing, good plumbing system, don't have you don't have all the utilities that you have enjoyed in your once perfect city life. Yeah, but yeah, if you're on a vacation, you would enjoy living in an island. But if you are really living in that island for quite some time, you'll hate it eventually. And if you think about it more, island life is not that glorious, and it's not that always relaxing. Say for example, there's a cyclone that will come past that island. Surely all of your possessions and your bahay kubo and all your houses that you built might get destroyed in that island. Well, especially if there are if that island is smaller and the waves would just crash over that island and wipe out all of your possession. No? Yeah. If you think about it, island life is not as glorious as the media would portray. Island life is actually probably more hazardous than the one that you are currently having right now in the mainland, in the city, no, where you're super protected by your house. You have the garbage collector that collects your garbage every now and then. You have all these utilities that that you take for granted, but if you are in an island, that would be totally absent, no? And imagine if you are in Hawaii, no, you're living the island life, and Mauna Kea and all of that volcanic chain, since it's an active volcano, just erupted, out of nowhere, and then all of you that lives in that island would die. No, there's no way for you to hide unless you have a plane ticket at that exact day, or you have a private plane that you can fly out, or a fast boat to evade that volcanic eruption. But yeah, living in an island is not that easy. Catastrophic event might wipe out your entire generation, entire population. Because typically, when you are living in an isolated area where there's no connection, no, imagine you're a species that doesn't have all of this technological advancement. When that catastrophic event happens, you're actually pretty dead. No, there's typically no place to hide in that isolated area, and there's no one to help you but yourself and your survival skills. But yeah, no, it's pretty difficult and pretty dangerous if you live in an island than in your mainland counterpart, especially in the context of your different species. Okay, and there are three types of island that we need to talk about here. The first one is the islands that can be created from a continent, no, but were separated by rising sea levels. Okay, so before, if you look at this place right here, before there is this large landmass that para siyang nag-coalesce, di ba? Parang paik ulit siya. So before there was this giant landmass, the giant land bridges that connected all of these chains of islands in Southeast Asia. No? But when the rising sea levels occurred due to melting glaciers and during the interglacial periods, you then get a separated units of islands. Your Borneo, your Indonesia, your Sri Lanka right here. That was once part of your Indian continent, but because of the rising sea level, it became a separated landmass, a separated island of its own. And syempre, andyan na yung Luzon and all of the multiple 7,100 islands of the Philippine archipelago. So that's the first one, the islands that were originally a part of a nearby continent, but essentially due to rising sea level became separated and became these land bridge islands. The next one is what we call the islands that are part of what we call the volcanic island arc. So how these islands form is simply because of the subduction dun sa banggaan, no? Convergent boundaries yan. At meron kang subduction ng mas mabigat na crust, no? O yung oceanic crust, usually yung nagsasubduct. And due to that subduction, meron kang melting of that oceanic crust right here. And that melting of the oceanic crust and through other processes, that would create now as you remember from our physical geography lecture, that would create your volcanic island arc. And as you all know, most of the islands in the Philippines are made by this process. Okay, the subduction of the heavier plate causes the island arc to form along that plate boundary. Okay, as well as your Californian mountain range, the mountains in California, and in the Peruvian Andean mountains, di ba kung maalala nyo? So yan ay volcanic island arc. The last type of island that I want to talk about is the ones that are formed from your geological hotspots. So these are your seamount chains. So seamount chains are formed due to your active hotspot in your mantle. So again, remember from our physical geography lecture, we have this hotspot that forms these volcanic chains, no, volcanic seamount chains, and this is the one that is responsible for your Hawaii island chains and for your Japanese the Japanese Emperor Island chains or Russian island chains. No? Nag-ano pa sila doon. Nag-agawan. But yeah, no? These are due to the hotspot volcanism naman. So, hindi siya due to the subduction, no? But due to hotspot volcanism. So, those are the three types of islands that we have here. Now, I want you to look at these islands in the Lesser Antilles in Central America, no? Bandang Puerto Rico, yung mga Grenada, Barbados, Dominica, and Antigua Barbuda, yung mga alam nyong mga bansa na maliliit doon. But yeah, the Lesser Antilles kung tawagin. So in the Lesser Antilles, we have what we call this we call this graph right here the species area curve. So if you look at this species area curve right here, as you can see here, the species area curve, we have a area versus the number of species right here. Area versus the number of species. And the main observation that our scientists made when they look at the first, say for example, the number of bird species in the Lesser Antilles, they have found that usually the larger the islands, they have more species than your smaller islands. So parang nagkaroon ka ng intuitive yun, no? Intuitive enough because of course, the larger the area that you have, the better. Diba? The better yun. Kasi kung mas malaki yung space mo, mas malaking spatial for the species to grow or the species to flourish. Tapos mas madaming food. So parang ganun. Makes sense, di ba? So, yeah, makita nila yun. That the general rule is that if you increase, no, the general rule is that if you increase the area of that island by tenfold, the number of species doubles. Okay? So if you increase the area by tenfold, the number of the species usually doubles. So parang naging general rules na yun. No? Although that is the simpler version of it. Okay? So these species area curves, these graphs right here, and the observation from the islands in Lesser Antilles, are the stepping stone into what we now call the theory of island biogeography. But the problem here is that the species area curve and the general rule that when you increase the area by tenfold, you double the species number. Diba? Yan yung general rule natin. You increase the area of the island by tenfold, you increase the number of species double. Okay? Yun yung general ano. But if you look at, say for example, the Hawaiian island, no? The Hawaiian island that was made, diba? Ito yung hat plume, diba? Yung mantle plume, volcanism. So if you look at the Hawaiian island and compare it to other islands, no? There are fewer species, no? Compared dun sa mas maliit na mga islands like yung sa New Guinea natin. So parang may mali. Parang may hindi ma-match, no? Okay? So, yeah, yung mga islands mo sa Society Islands, no, yung Tahiti, Maria, Bora Bora, which are collectively has the same area nung that we'll now call the theory of island biogeography. Now, I want you to think about the earlier fact that we mentioned, the intuitive fact that we mentioned, the general rule. What's the general rule again? The general rule says that if you increase the area by tenfold, you double the species that you can see in that island. But there are certain scientists have found out during their surveys on certain islands that this species area curve, this general rule does not apply. No? It does not apply to certain islands. Like for example, when you look at the Hawaiian Islands that are 10 times the size of certain islands in the Pacific, no? Although they are larger, But when the scientist looks at the number of species that inhabits the island, there are fewer native birds compared to certain smaller island nations, no? So yeah, there are these certain discrepancies. That's why Robert MacArthur and Edward O. Wilson, and from your video, the video in conservation by biogeography. So panoorin niyo yung video attached dyan sa VLE core site. If you look at that, they developed the certain theory to explain such uneven distribution, no? What other factors may have caused, no? Hindi lang pala area, meron pa palang ibang factors na nagko-cause ng discrepancies dun sa number of species. So ano nga ba yung theory na pinropose nila Edward O. Wilson at ni MacArthur? So yung theory na yon is ito, equilibrium theory of island biogeography. So this model predicts the influence of immigration and extinction on the equilibrium number of species that inhabits an island. So basically ang sinasabi ng theory na to is meron tayong equilibrium number. Okay? Number of species. Equilibrium number of species. So ano yung number of species na yan? Sa isang island daw, meron kang kaya mo daw i-predict yung number of species na kaya mag-inhabit doon or yung number of species na mag-i-inhabit doon. So yun yung theory na to. Mapipredict mo yung number of species na kayang mag-inhabit or na mag-i-inhabit dun sa island na yon based sa immigration. Siyempre, ang gagawin ng immigration, remember, magdadagdag ng species dun sa island. At siyempre, meron kang palabas na extinction. At kapag may extinction ka, bababa yung number of species mo. So, yung dalawang processes daw na to, ang magpipredict dun sa number of species na kayang mabuhay dun sa island na yon. No? At mag-i-inhabit dun sa island na yon. Now, we should talk about that equilibrium na pinag-uusapan natin dito. Yung equilibrium na yon, ulitin natin sa equilibrium theory of island biogeography is the number of species that we expect to be relatively constant over time. Again, yung equilibrium number na yan ay binabalanse ng dalawang puwersa. No? Yung force ng immigrating na dumadagdag sa number of species na kaya mabuhay doon. Yung isa naman ay yung species na namamatay na bumabawas sa number of species na makikita mo doon. Yan dalawang factor na yan ay nag-a-act to be in equilibrium. At bibigyan ka nung number na yon. The constant number na time after time, yun pa rin yung number of species na makikita mong buhay or makikita mong buhay dun sa area niyon. But, ito yung kicker dito. No? The kicker is, dynamic again yung equilibrium na yan. That although the species number in a certain island is fixed, the composition of the species themselves can change. No? So, sabihin natin 1,000 yung species number na yan. So, na-compute natin at alam natin na ang equilibrium number of species doon ay 1,000 lang doon sa island na yun. So, after 10 years, after millions of years, 1,000 pa rin yung number of species doon. But, before, mas madami yung spiders, compared dun sa mga ants, or compared dun sa mga birds, at sa mga crabs siguro, no? But then, nag-iba ulit after millions of years, mag-iiba ulit yung composition. Pwedeng maging large mammals na, pwedeng maging kung ano-ano pa, maging iba na yung composition. But the number, kaya siya in equilibrium pa rin, would still be the same. More or less the same. Yun yung sinasabi ng theory na to. At equilibrium, parehas pa rin yung number, but the composition may change. composition of the species that you can see because of your immigration and your extinction. No? May kakaibang rate depende sa species mo. Okay ba tayo doon? Now, let's move on to this graph right here. I want you guys to focus on this graph right here. This graph right here. Okay? Now. Let's look at this graph. Pretty good graph right here. So we have, look at this graph. We have small islands. Okay? Of course, we also have large islands. We have near islands. We have far islands. Okay ba? Magkalayo, magkalapit. Near islands, far islands. Okay. So, tignan muna natin sila dito sa term ng extinction rate. Ngayon, sabi niya dito, yung small island daw, mas mataas ang extinction rate compared sa large islands. Bakit ganon? Kasi, the smaller the islands, mas vulnerable yan, 'di ba? Sa disaster kasi mas maliit. Tapos, mas vulnerable yan sa food loss kasi nga mas maliit, mas konti yung resources. Kaya mas make sense lang na mas mataas yung extinction rate dyan compared sa larger islands. So yeah, okay lang, extinction rate. Ngayon, punta naman tayo dun sa colonization rate or dun sa tinatawag nating immigration. So, lagyan natin immigration dito. Colonization rate. Ngayon, pag far away yung island, so let's say this island right here, yung kinulayan natin, yan yung mainland. Okay ba? Yan yung parang source. No? Source of species natin, yung mainland. Kulayan natin yung mainland. Ngayon, kaya natin tinawag na near islands to, malapit siya dun sa mainland mo. Ito naman ay far island kasi malayo siya dun sa mainland mo. Ngayon, sabi niya dito, in terms of colonization rate, yung near islands natin, mataas ang colonization rate, but yung mga far islands natin ay mababa ang colonization rate. Makes sense, no? Kasi pag maliit lang yung distance na kailangan i-travel ng mga organism na yan, mas madadalian sila, di ba? Compared dun sa mga organism na kailangan mag-travel pa ng sobrang habang distance, no? Kailangan pa nilang lumangoy ng sobrang haba para ma-traverse yung at para ma-colonize yung isang lugar. Diba? Mas mababa yung immigration at mas mababa yung colonization rate doon. Malamang. So intuitive enough yan, no? Now, so ganito naman yung kailangan nating tignan dito. Ito na yung kicker. So itong graph natin dito sa baba is the number of species. So ibig sabihin, mas konti yung number of species here, mas madami yung number of species here. Ngayon, paano natin siya interpret? Tignan natin. So, tignan natin tong point of intersection, itong S1 na to. Okay? Yung S1 na yan, ito siya, di ba? So, yan, S1. Okay? So, tignan natin si S1. Yan yung intersection ng far islands at ng small islands. So, siya yung may pinakamababang number of species. Kasi nga, make sense, no? Pag malayo yung island mo dun sa mainland, mahirapan mag-colonize, therefore, mas konti yung species. Kapag smaller yung islands mo, di ba? Pag smaller yung islands mo, mas konti yung resources, mas prone sa extinction. Okay ba? Kaya, siya yung may pinakamababang number of species. Ngayon, pag pupunta tayo dito kay S4, yung intersection ng near island at ng large island, siya yung may pinakamadaming number of species. Bakit? Ba't siya yung pinakamadaming number of species? Kasi kung titingnan natin, siya yung intersection ng large, siya yung intersection ng near island. At alam natin na kapag malapit sa mainland, mas madaming nagko-colonize, mas mataas yung number of species. Kapag larger yung island, mas madaming space, mas madaming resources, mas mababa yung extinction rate, kaya mas madaming species. Ngayon, in between yung dalawa na ito. Okay? Yung near islands na small islands at yung far islands na larger islands. In between yung kanyang number of species. Okay ba? But yeah, kung makikita nyo, yung far islands pala na larger, no, siya pa rin yung mas mataas compared dun sa near islands, no, compared dito, near islands na smaller. So medyo malaking bagay pa rin talaga, mas malaking bagay pa rin yung size ng islands. But now, nakita na natin na hindi lang pala yung size yung kailangan mong tignan. No? Hindi lang pala yung size yung kailangan mo dito. Hindi lang yung size ng island yung kailangan mong tignan. Kailangan mo din palang tignan yung kung gaano siya kalapit, no? No, yung distance niya from the nearest source, from the nearest mainland. From the mainland, no? So kung malayo siya sa mainland, medyo mahihirapan yung mga species na mag-colonize. Okay ba tayo doon? Okay ba? So yeah, yung near islands natin dito, they have the higher immigration rate because yung mas mataas yung likelihood ng mga organisms na mag-swimming across kapag mas maliit lang yung distance. Compared sabihin mo, di ba? Kaya ma-explain mo yung sa Hawaii. Kaya mas konti yung species kanina doon. Kasi isipin mo yung kung gaano kalayo yung lalayuin ng species mo mula sa pinakamalapit na mainland, which is US or tayo ata, no? Nasa gitna siya, right smack dab ng Pacific, no? Kaya ang layo, walang magko-colonize sa kanyang mga species. Mga ibon siguro pwede. Pero yung ibang species mahihirapang mag-colonize ng Hawaii. At syempre, alam natin na yung large island ay lower extinction rate because madami ng resources, no? Madami ng resources. Tapos mas malaki pa na yung kayang i-accommodate na population ng mga larger islands. 'Di ba? Kapag the larger the island, the manier the species, the larger the population it can accommodate, therefore lower risk of extinction. So yeah, that's why this graph of MacArthur and Wilson was very good because they reasoned that the equilibrium species number, this species number right here, will be influenced by both the immigration to the islands and the extinction on the islands, which is both. So yeah, MacArthur realized that you need to account for extinction. I-clear natin. So MacArthur realized that for you to find that equilibrium number, the number of species that can thrive in that island, you need to think about extinction and think about immigration. And these two are predicted, diba, by ulitin natin, the size of the island and the distance of the island from the mainland, respectively. Okay ba? So, yun lang naman yung graph na yan. Ngayon, paano nila na-test ni Wilson at ni Simberloff at ni MacArthur yung kanilang model? Yung model nila na to ng equilibrium theory of island biogeography. Diba? Ang weird. Paano nila ginawa? So, ganito yung kwento niyan. No? Magkakwento na si Sir. So, parang ito. Imagine nyo to. Florida Keys. Meron kang series of islands there sa Florida Keys. So, sa baba ng Florida Keys. Okay? So, ang weird nung ginawa nilang experiment, no? Sana hindi natin, ang ganda din siguro na gagawin natin to pag ginawa natin to dito sa Pilipinas. But yeah, medyo weird yung ginawa nilang experiment. So, paano yung ginawa nila? Ganito po. So, para talaga siyang mad science. Mad science. Kung saan, nag-dephonate sila, no? Dephonation. Ibig sabihin niyan, kinal at pinatay nila lahat ng species dun sa isang island. Okay? So, ang ginawa nila ay nag-census sila ng insect at arthropods dun sa isang island. So, ang ginawa nila, kuwari, may island sila dito, may island sila dito. Tapos, alam nila na ito yung mainland. Kaya nilang i-measure yung distance ng island na yan, no, from the mainland. Ang ginawa nila, nag-cage sila dito. They hired the pest company to dephonate the island. lalagyan nila ng rubber tent yung island na yon. Tapos mag-spray sila ng parang insecticide talaga, no? Methyl bromide, nag-spray sila ng methyl bromide. Tapos ang gagawin niya methyl bromide niya, papatayin niya yung insects at mga arthropods doon. Ngayon, yung unang pagpatay nila ng mga species, no? Talagang papatayin nila lahat ng species dun sa island na yun. Isipin nyo sa Alaminos, lalagyan mo ng tent yung isang island doon sa 100 islands. Tapos papatayin mo yung mga species na makikita mo. Tapos, bibilangin nila yung species. So, itatali nila yung mga crabs na nakita nila, yung mga insects, kung ilang insects, mga spiders na nakita nila. Spider, sorry. Hindi pala insect yan. So, itatali nila yung mga insects na nakita nila doon, mga arthropods, mga crabs, mga ganyan. Nakita nila doon sa island, yung mga hayop-hayop na yun. Tapos, hahayaan nila yung lugar. No? Hayaan nila. Tapos, from time to time, i-visit nila periodically yung lugar, titignan ulit nila sa census nila kung ilan na yung species na nandun. At during the result, nakita nila na gumagana yung equilibrium theory. No? Nakita nila. Through censusing lang, no? Talagang nagbibilang lang sila ng insects at arthropods. No? So, yung nakita nila doon, no, na resulta, it supports the idea of equilibrium. That in just less than a year, the nearest island, no, ulitin natin, lagyan natin ng So, may dalawa lang tayong island, for example, for simplicity. So, dun yung result nila, the nearest island has 44 species that were originally 43. The furthest island originally has 25 species, but nung sinurvey nila, no, after nilang patayin lahat ng species doon, 22. So, na-confirm nila, no, na medyo malapit. After just 1 year of letting it regenerate, makukuha mo na yung number ng original population back then. Okay? Similar pattern were maintained after 2 years, after 3 years, and so on and so forth. So this result back here na laging malapit dun sa equilibrium number, yung number ng species mo, constantly, every time, every day, no? Kahit mag-ano ka pa. So this result supports the dynamic equilibrium idea na yung species identity, although the species identities change, the number nung nagstay na species doon ay relatively constant. No? Yun yung nakita nila. Although, yung mga 44 species na to, hindi na siya katulad nung 43 na mga nakita nung una. Nag-iba yung composition niya. Mas dumami yung insects dun sa arthropods, may mga ganon. But the number stays the same. Almost the same. No? Very similar. Relatively constant. After years and years of surveys. Okay ba? So yeah, the researchers back then found that the higher immigration rate on closed islands are expected because mas malapit nga siya dun sa mainland natin, di ba? Compared dun sa farthest island. At yun, no? Nakita nila na kaya mo palang ma-predict yung number of species. Okay ba? Yun pala, nakalimutan kong sabihin. Parehas yung size ng islands na ginamit nila dito. Para more or less ma-compare nila at ma-test nila yung hypothesis or yung relationship between nung distance, no? At extinction rate. Okay ba? So yeah, same size yung ginamit nila dito. Okay, so yun, nakita nila na may kinalaman yung distance. Tapos, na meron kang number na nagstay the same. May equilibrium na kung tinatawag nila. No? So yeah. So ganun ka weird yung pinagagawa nila. Isipin mo kung ginawa natin yun sa 100 Island National Parks or kung yun yung ginawa namin sa Tacloban. dinephonate namin yung mga island, yung mga insects doon. Kasi papatay, sprayan mo talaga para mamatay sila. So yan, mad science talaga yan. Kaya medyo nakukutan ako sa experiment na to nila Wilson. Okay, so there are certain modification to the model, of course. Right now, may tinatawag tayong rescue effect. So ito, yung rescue effect, ito yung when you have a smaller population na malapit nang ma-extinct. No? Kuwari may isang island ka na nandyan. Tapos meron kang mainland dito. So kapag may species ka dito na malapit nang ma-extinct, pwede silang ma-rescue ng bagong species, no? Na nagmamigrate papunta dun sa island na yun. So kung nagdidwindle na yung population dito ng species na yun, ma-rescue sila ng bagong species, same species pa rin, na magmamigrate at susupply ng bagong tao dun sa island na yun. So, immigrant of the same species. So, yeah. But yeah, yung extinction na sinasabi natin dito, hindi siya yung extinction na extinction, extirpation yung tawag natin dyan. Kung saan, para siyang extinction, pero dun lang sa lugar na yun. Okay ba? Pag sinabi mo extirpation, yan yung extinction on that hindi siya extinction. Siya yung parang extinction, pero dun lang sa area na yun. Kumbaga, naubos lang yung species na yun dun sa area. Pero on the other area, ibang lugar, meron pa rin yung species na yun. Extirpation yung tinutukoy na ditong extinction. And other modification are your small island effect. Papag-usapan natin mamaya. The evolution and interspecific interaction that mold island biotas. We'll discuss them later on. And the different taxonomic group will usually reach equilibria at certain time. So, yeah. Yung mga birds mo, yung mga arthropods mo, yung mga mammals mo, magkakaiba yung time na marireach nila yung equilibrium. Yung number nila dun sa island na yun. Now, so merong mga few modifications. Yung una ay rescue effect. Ngayon, pag-usapan natin yung small island effect. Anong ibig sabihin yan? Kapag masyadong maliit yung mga islands mo, wala ka ng species area curve, wala ka ng area diversity effect na makikita. So, ibig sabihin, kapag sobrang liliit ng mga islands mo, wala ka ng yung, hindi na nag-a-apply na kapag in-increase mo yung area, no? I-increase din yung number of species. So, usually sa mga smaller islands, parang negligible na yung area mo. Wala ka nang nakikitang changes. Because usually in smaller islands, there are fewer habitats na kayang mapakita yung ganitong relationship. No? The increasing the area will also increase the species. That's the small island effect. The next is yung differential immigration rate ng different organism na may different dispersal ability or different dispersal mechanism. Kaya pinag-usapan natin dun sa mga past lectures natin, di ba, kung maalala nyo, yung different dispersal mechanism ng mga plants, yung dispersed by wind, dispersed by sea, dispersed by animal. Kasi importante siya dito sa pag-usapan natin dito. Kasi dun sa Krakatau island plants, nung sumabog yung Krakatau na volcano, tinignan nila, yun, isang magandang experiment yon, no? Kasi naturally nangyari yung pagsabog ng bulkan at na-clear yung mga species na meron doon. At pwede nyo din itong ma-apply sa Taal volcano nung sumabog kung namatay man lahat ng mga species dun sa area ng Taal. But yeah, nung nakita nila, different organism na may different dispersal mechanism, no? For plants, magkakaiba yung time nila, no? Magkakaiba yung yung time nila para ma-reach yung kanilang equilibrium at para mag-disperse din sila. Yeah, magkakaiba yung immigration rate ng mga organism na iba yung dispersal mechanism. So for the case of the Krakatau island plants, mas mabilis yung pag-increase ng species ng mga sea dispersed, followed by your wind dispersed, and then followed by your animal dispersed. But later on, mas efficient na yung mga animal dispersed na mga organism, na mga plants, I mean. Earlier lang na yung sea dispersed. Sa Taal naman, nakita natin na mas maayos yung mga wind dispersed kasi mas malapit lang, no? Compared dun sa mga sea dispersed, then followed by the animal dispersed na mga species, 'di ba? Dun sa mga studies noon, kung maalala niyo yung lecture natin. Now, there are other concepts pertaining to island patterns. Now, I want you guys to remember these three concepts. We have your ecological release. Ito yung kung saan nagkakaroon ng expansion yung isang species in the absence of competitor. Meron tayong tinatawag na harmonic insular biotas at meron naman tayong disharmonic insular biotas. So, yung harmonic insular biotas, these are the proportion of different type of organisms are similar on island at yung sa source, meaning yung mainland mo. That's your harmonic. Pag sinabi mo namang disharmonic, yung sa island mo at dun sa mainland ay different, no? Hindi sila magkamukha. Dito magkamukha sila. Okay? Bakit yun importante? Kasi 'di ba, yung mainland mo ang source ng mga organism. Pero kung titignan nyo dito, hindi pala lagi yung mga species nito ang kaya mag-dominate ng island, mga organism na magpapopulate ng island na yan. Meron pa pala mga ibang mga patterns na magkakos ng changes. No? Mga ganong bagay. Yan, I want you to pay attention dun sa ecological release na to. Yung ecological release na yan ay napaka-importante. Kasi once an organism reach a certain region na walang competitor, 'di ba? For example, dun sa Galapagos Island natin, 'di ba? Kung maalala niyo yung speciation, no? Na-experience din ng birds na yon yung ecological release kasi nga yung island na yon before was uninhabited. Siya lang yung meron doon. So naka-experience yung Galapagos Island, yung mga finches sa Galapagos Island ng ecological release. At inoccupy nila nagkaroon sila ng radiation, no? Na-occupy nila yung ibang niches na meron doon. Yung ibang mga finches, yung cactus yung kinakain, yung iba seeds yung kinakain, yung iba insect, yung iba ay kung anek-anek yung kinakain, mga ganon, no? Usually, kapag may absence na competitor, na-experience ng organism yung ecological release na yan. So, there is this question right here. So, why is that different taxonomic groups reach equilibria at different points in time? There are three main reasons: immigration, establishment, and extinction. Different taxonomic groups differ at these 3 points right here. That's why they reach equilibria at the different time. Why do I say that? So let's talk about that. So let's talk about immigration first. So in oceanic islands, yung mga islands na dyan sa, yung mga Hawaiian Islands natin, yung Guam, Fiji, mga ganyan, yung mga oceanic islands natin na yan, there are bats that are well represented in those islands. So for example, sa New Zealand and sa Hawaii, bats are present. Compared dun sa mga mammals, no? Yung mga large non-flying mammals. That makes sense kasi yung mga bats natin lumilipad, mas mabilis nilang makolonize yung mga oceanic islands. Birds also are present at yung mga plants na kinakain ng birds na to at yung mga parasite ng mga birds na to ay present din dun sa mga oceanic islands na yan, like New Zealand, Hawaii, at yung mga American colonies dyan sa yung mga Guam, ganyan. Kasi nga, lumilipad yung mga birds na to. So, yeah. Amphibians and other freshwater fish are poorly distributed dun sa mga oceanic islands natin. Again, sa Hawaii at sa New Zealand, mga ganyan. Kasi nga, no, kaya sa New Zealand, there has no native freshwater fish. Kasi nga, pag yung freshwater fish na yan ay naglakbay sa dagat, mamatay yan. Kasi freshwater fish yan. Yung mga amphibians, hindi din niya matotolerate yung high salinity. Again, sa case naman ng crab-eating frog at ng Bufo marinus, no, yung Rhinella marina natin, yung giant toad, yung marine or giant toad na yan, kaya siyang makita dun sa mga oceanic islands. Kasi meron siyang more often than compared to your other amphibians. Kasi meron tong ability na matolerate yung salt water. No? So yeah, that's amazing. So bats, birds, usually makikita sa mga oceanic islands. Amphibians and freshwater fish, hindi, except for yung mga species nito. So ano pa? Ano pa bang mga example? Ito, yung mga slugs are infrequently found on oceanic islands, while yung mga snails, no, that often thrive in dry habitats ay pwedeng makita sa mga islands natin. Yung large species that can stay active year-round are more likely to be found on islands. Yan, ito, maganda tong tignan. Islands that are large or islands that are in archipelagos, like for example, yun sa Pilipinas, no? Sa Pilipinas, may Palawan, may Visayas, may Mindanao. Ayan, may Pilipinas tayo. Usually, kapag may mga ganyan tayong island chains, archipelagos, madali din siyang makita ng mga dispersers natin. Yung mga organisms na, yung mga plant for examples na mahilig mag-disperse ng kanilang seed sa tubig or sa hangin, no? Madali silang makita kasi nga island chain sila, no? At yung mga disperser na yan ay makikita mo dun sa entire island chains na yan. Ngayon, particularly important din sa island biogeography, yung water current. Kasi di ba kung maalala nyo yung physical geography natin, kung may water current ka dyan, wala dito, di ba, sa South China Sea may water current ka, tapos yung mga species mo dito sa mainland Asia ay madadala ng water current papunta sa Palawan, papunta dito sa Luzon, sa Ilocos, no? E di, yung water current na yan ay pwedeng makatulong sa pag-disperse ng organism na yan. So, pati na din yung strong winds. Kung may strong winds ka along the path of that island, madadalian yung mga disperser na ma-establish dun sa island na yan. Again, pwedeng yan yung maging reason, no? Kaya hindi masusunod yung species area curve. Kasi nga, on the way pala siya ng mga species na to, nung water current. Kaya siya mas madami laging species. Or on the way pala siya nung wind pattern. Kaya nabublow away doon yung mga species na to. No? So yeah. The next is establishment. So tapos na tayo sa immigration, yung mga examples natin. In terms of establishment naman, ayan, kapag generalist, yung species, yung ibig sabihin niyan, kaya niyang kumain ng yung mga omnivores, usually, di ba, mga generalists yan. Kumakain niya ng kung ano-ano, kahit anong pagkain. More likely, madali siyang ma-establish sa isang lugar. Okay? Pag specialist ka, okay, pag specialist ka, medyo less likely na ma-establish ka sa isang lugar. Kasi for example, ikaw ay kumakain ng eucalyptus, koala ka, no? Tapos pumunta ka sa Pilipinas, or saan ba walang eucalyptus plant? Pumunta ka sa desert na walang eucalyptus plant, edi kawawa ka. Pero yung generalist mo, no, na pinunta mo sa desert, pwede pa rin siyang kumain ng scorpion, mga snakes, mga ganyan. May chance pa rin siyang mag-survive. No? So parang ganun siya. So may plus points ang generalist, may minus points ang mga specialist. Okay? So dito, a study with land snails naman have found that species with individuals that could self-fertilize are more likely to become established than those species that could not do so. So yan, no? Kasi kapag lumipat ka sa bagong island, mahihirapan kang maghanap usually ng partner mo. No? Kung mag-isa ka lang na napadpad doon. Kaya may plus points yung kaya mo self-fertilize. No? Pwede ka ma-establish well on that island. Next, individuals with high fecundity rate, no? Yung kaya manganak ng madami, no? Large flock clutch, large brood size sa mga bird, no, are can become more established than those species that does not have a high fecundity rate. Okay? So maganda palang madami kang mga anak or mabilis kang mga anak or malalaki yung clutch size mo. Isang anakan, madami agad. No? Mas madali ka ma-establish sa isang lugar. Pag-usapan natin pala muna, pag sinabi mong establishment, iba siya sa pagpadpad lang dun sa isang lugar. Pag sinabi mong establishment, just like in your invasive alien species, ito yung kailangan mo nang dumami, no? Yung parang noticeable na yung dami mo dun sa isang lugar. At talagang may parang mark ka na dun sa lugar na yon. No? May certain number ka na hindi na maikakailan na meron yung presence mo doon. Ma-establish ka. Okay? So, hindi ka basta-basta maapektuhan ng kung ano nung factors kapag na-establish ka na kasi. Okay, islands that are large with a diversity of habitats and resources may be more hospitable to population. Okay? So, kapag yung islands mo daw ay malaki, mas madali kang mako-colonize at mas madaling ma-establish yung mga organism mo. So, intuitive naman yun. Ngayon, let's talk about extirpation naman. In terms of extirpation, ito na yung local extinction ng isang species. No? Pag sinabi mo extirpation, local extinction. Now, island populations are more likely to go locally extinct than those mainland for several reasons. Na-mention na natin to earlier. Yung una, population dun sa island. So, mainland versus your island. Na-mention natin to kanina. Mainland versus island, yung population ng mainland mo, mas madami compare sa island. Kaya mas mabilis, mas mataas yung chance na ma-extinct to pag na-genetic drift yan, may cyclone, mga ganyan. No? Dahil nga typically smaller yung population, mas mataas yung chance na magkaroon ng extinction. They have less genetic diversity. So sa Science 11 class ko, lagi kong minimension yung case ng colorblind island, no? Colorblind island na Micronesian usually sa Micronesian island 'yon. At dahil nga konti lang yung genetic diversity nila, may malaki yung chance ng genetic drift na maapektuhan sila ng genetic drift. At dun sa island na yon, nakita nila na madami yung cases ng colorblind people kasi nung bagyo pala nung bumagyo nung isang time, yung isa sa mga nabuhay na tao doon, so dun sa 20 tao na nabuhay, isa dun sa mga yon ay colorblind. Tapos siya yung nag-father ng entire population ng island. Kaya yun, no? So yeah, dahil sa less genetic diversity nga, kasi maliit yung population mo, mataas yung chance ng local extinction sa smaller islands natin. Okay? The last one is that when they are not originally adapted to the island habitat, yung mga organism na yon, no? Kung hindi sila adapted initially to the island habitat, mahihirapan silang mabuhay at eventually magkakause yun ng death nila. Say for example, napadpad ka dun sa island na wala kang pagkain. No? Wala kang pagkain na yung normally na kinakain mo, 'di ba? Dun sa case ng generalist at specialist natin. 'Di ba? Dun sa Galapagos Island, napadpad dun yung iguana. Wala siyang pagkain na natural na kinakain niya. To live, nag-adapt siya no? Nag-adapt siya ng ibang pagkain. Ang kinakain na ng mga marine iguana na yon ay yung algae. So, buti na lang kaya niyang i-digest yung algae na yon at kaya niyang mabuhay dun sa algae diet. Kaya nabuhay siya dun sa island. But say for example, kung tayo, algae lang yung kakainin natin, may chance na baka maselan yung sikmura natin. Kasi wala na tayong pagkain, hindi mamamatay tayo dun sa island na yun. Sabihin natin, yung ibon naman, yung mapadpad doon, tapos puro algae lang yung nakikita niya. Kung yung ibon na yan, hindi kaya mag-digest ng algae na yon, di mamamatay siya. Wala siyang choice. Kundi mamamatay. When a species is lost by extirpation, usually mahirap na yung ma-replace. No? Ang isa pang bagay dito, Kuwari meron kang area ng mainland tapos meron kang maliit na island. So kung yung size nito ay 10 meter squared, tapos may area ka sa mainland na 10 meter squared din, yung habitat mo na yan. Usually, yung species dito, mas maliit pa rin, no? Mas mababa pa rin yung species na makikita mo dito compared dun sa mainland na parehas lang na size na habitat. Kasi nga, again, mas prone to sa extirpation. No? Kahit parehas siya ng area dun sa mainland na to, na 10 meters squared, mas prone pa rin to sa extirpation. Mas prone pa rin sa genetic drift. At mas maliit pa rin, mahirap ma-establish yung mga organism kasi. Next naman, sabi niya dito, usually daw yung malalaking mga animals, carnivores, at mga specialist, hindi yan nagsusurvive dun sa mga island natin. Usually na-extinct sila. Compared dun sa maliliit na generalist na herbivores. Mas mataas yung chance na mag-survive to compared dito sa mga to. Kasi daw, yung mga smaller generalist natin usually can have larger population, and with larger population size, there is less probability of extinction. Okay? Now, moving on. There are other evolutionary patterns that you can see on an island life. Ito na yung maganda. No? Kung napanood nyo yung ating video dun sa VLE course site tungkol sa flightless birds, ito na yung dahilan niya. No? Kung bakit madaming flightless birds sa mga island nations natin. Okay? So, kasi daw, no, when a species colonize an island, so a bird species colonize an island, di ba? Nawawala na yung need for flight. No? Nawawala na yung need for flight. Kaya, nababawasan yung dispersal ability ng mga birds na to, for example. So, ito yung mga birds na yan. No? So, ironically, yung mga ancestors, di ba, alam natin yung mga ancestors ng flightless birds na yon, magaling sila mag-disperse. Pero once nag-colonize na sila ng island, yung mga descendants nila, hindi na nag-disperse well. At to such an extent pa nga, nagkakaroon ng changes dun sa body size nila. No? Ayan. Yan yung case ng mga flightless birds natin at flightless insects that are common on oceanic islands. Kuwari for example, sa New Zealand, 25 to 35% of the land and freshwater birds nila are flightless. 24% naman dun sa mga bird species ng Hawaii are also flightless. Same sa Madeira Islands, dito sa coast ng Africa and Portugal. Yung mga beetle species nila ay flightless din. So bakit may ganun, no? Bakit may reduced dispersal ability? But yung mga birds ay pag na-colonize nila yung island, pag nag-stay sila dun sa island, mawawala yung kanilang kakayanan maging flight. Bakit may ganung pattern na nakikita yung mga scientists natin? Ano kayang dahilan? So if you watch that video, yung evolution of flightlessness, there are certain evolutionary theory that could predict why is that so. Okay? So, yung una is yung predation kasi, diba? Kung wari, isa kang bird, flightlessness, for starters, yung flightlessness ay na-develop to avoid predator. No? Isa siyang escape mechanism na na-develop, no, to avoid predators. Kaya, at importante yung predation, no, sa evolution ng flight. No, importante siya kasi kapag marunong ka lumipad, kaya mong takasan yung mga predators mo, 'di ba? Madali kang makakatakas, madali kang makakailag dun sa mga land mammals na gustong kumain sa iyo. No? At importante yung predation na 'yan sa evolution ng flight, sa evolution ng mga wings natin. Kaya naman, kapag yung organism mo ay napadpad sa isang island na walang traditional predators, walang pressure sa kanila, no? Walang pressure sa kanila na lumipad. No? Walang selective pressure na lumipad sa kanila. Yung kanilang flight muscles na mahirap gawin ay nawawala. Diba? Remember, itong mga flight muscles na to, hindi to basta-basta madaling gawin, no? Kailangan mong mag-invest ng energy para lumipad ka, 'di ba? Kailangan mong pababa ng bone density mo para mas lightweight ka. But in the absence of predators, hindi na importante yung napakagastos na mga flight muscles na 'yan. So, bakit ka pa lilipad kung wala naman ikaw tatakasan? So, okay lang na hindi ka lumipad-lipad, no? So, walang selective pressure for our birds kapag napadpad sila sa island na walang natural predators. So, walang selective pressure, walang incentive sila na lumipad. That's why they became flightless. Yung energy na instead na gagamitin nila para sa pag-develop ng flight muscles, pag-develop ng wings na maganda, pwede nilang ituon yun sa paggawa ng offspring nila, no? Sa sex or other activities na mas beneficial sa survival nila dun sa island life. Okay? Para dun sa young nila, for example. So, the hypothesis that explains these patterns is, number one is energy conservation. Kasi nga, nasa island life ka, no? Usually, konti yung pagkain doon, konti yung energy source mo. Dahil lower energy source yung food mo ngayon, kailangan mag-conserve ka. At dahil napakadaming energy yung kailangan para ma-develop yung flight muscles, diba? Napakadaming energy yung kailangan dyan, it makes sense na hindi mo na gawin yun, no? Para ma-conserve mo yung energy mo. The next one is yung advantage ng staying inside. No? Ito yung tinatawag nating site fidelity or yung staying near the natal site. Kasi kapag ginawa mo yun, pag nagstay ka dun sa kung saan ka pinanganak, mas mataas yung chance na makakita ka ng mate din. At mas mataas din yung chance na makita ka ng food. Na yung food na to, yung kinakain din nung nanay at tatay mo nun. So those are the site advantages of staying at home. Diba? Mas protected ka, diba? Mga ganon. So, there is also this change in body size na kaakibat ng pag-colonize ng mga islands natin. Yung isang pattern na nakikita ng mga scientists natin is that yung mga maliliit na organism mo, kapag na-colonize nila yung isang island, pag pumunta sila sa isang island, usually lumalaki sila. Yung malalaking species mo, pag na-colonize nila yung island, liliit sila. Diba? Parang ironically, may ganong nangyayari. So, bakit ganon? No? Bakit may ganong pag-change in body size? Yung una dong teorya nila is the ecological release. Yung ecological release, kasi nga yung mga smaller species na to, when they, with these smaller animals, when they reach the area na walang competitors, na walang predators, nagbo-boom sila. So, kain sila ng kain, lumalaki sila, nagkakaroon ng ecological release. No? So, lumalaki yung mga smaller animals na to. But, yung mga bigger animals mo naman, no? Pag narating nila yung island, lumiliit sila kasi may resource limitation naman na nag-aano sa kanila. Kailangan mas konti lang yung kainin nila dahil baka kulangin sila sa energy source, pagkain, no? But also, this change in body size is due or a byproduct of the characteristic mismo nung immigrators natin, ng mga nagmamigrate na mga organism mo. Usually, successful active disperser may tend to be larger individuals of a species. Because, for example, if you are a larger individuals, yung mga nagmamigrate talaga mga organism, if you are a larger individual, mas madami kang energy reserve at therefore mas masusurvive mo yung long journey ahead of you papunta dun sa oceanic islands. Yung sa case naman ng passive dispersers natin, they tend to be smaller individuals. Kasi pag mas maliit ka na mga na organism, mas madali kang ma-carry ng hangin at ma-disperse by it. So advantages of large size due to ecological release. Larger individuals can produce more offspring. Larger individuals can tend to win competition. Larger individuals have more stored energy and make it through food shortage. Advantages of small size naman due to resource limitation. So smaller individuals can get by with less food and other resources. Kasi nga maliit yung katawan nila, no? Smaller individuals can often use food more efficiently than larger individuals, no? Mas madali nila ma-assimilate yung food kasi nga mas maliit sila. Smaller individuals too can use smaller shelters, smaller hiding spot than your larger individuals. So yeah, both of them has advantages. Kaya minsan nagkakaroon ng changes in body size. Yung body size changes na yon from maliit, lalaki, yung may malaki naman to liliit. So yun yung changes ng body size natin. So yeah, ito yung basic tenet natin. Due to resource limitation, due to ecological release. Okay? Other insular biotas na makikita natin. So this would be the last portion of our lecture para tapos na tayo sa island biogeography. So other insular biotas na meron tayo dyan, other islands, the theory of island biogeographies are also applied to other insular biotas. Ngayon, ginagamit na yung island biogeographic theory for vertebrates on mountaintops, yung mga invertebrates natin sa caves, pati na yung fishes sa lakes, pati yung herbivorous insects on plants. So, di ba kung maalala nyo yung mga sky islands na sinasabi natin? So, dahil yung mga top lang ng islands na yan, dyan lang mabubuhay yung top area ng mountain na yan, dyan lang nabubuhay yung daga na yan or yung mga mammals. Pati yung mga lakes, parang ang gusto kong makita nyo dito, no? In themselves. No? Yung mga sky islands natin, nagsaserve as islands na para siyang isolated community. Diba? Kung yung organism mo dyan lang sa mountaintop na yan mabubuhay, mga organism mo na yan dyan lang sa mountaintop na yan mabubuhay, technically, isolated sila dun sa mga organism na nandito. At eventually, magli-lead yun sa speciation. Ganon din, example, sa mga freshwater lakes natin. So, kung wari, meron kang lake body na ganito, kalaki, and then eventually, nag-dry up siya, nagkaroon ka ng dalawang lake body na lang na mas maliit. No? Kasi nga, nag-dry up yung wala ng source ng water masyado. Lumiit sila, naging dalawang lake body. And eventually, magkakaroon ka in themselves, no? Naging two islands na to na separated at isolated from each other. Okay ba? So ngayon, no? Pati fish sa mga lakes natin. Kung yung river mo, for example, may river ka, ayan. 'Di ba? Kung maaalala nyo yung river natin, meron kang meanders, meron kang ganyan-ganyan, may pa-curve-curve ka. Ngayon, kapag nagkaroon ng reverse ng course ng history ng river na yan, burahin natin. So kung nagmi-meander yung river mo, ayan. Tapos, through time, nagkaroon ng change sa course ng history ng river. So instead na pag ganun siya, meron kang shortcut na nagawa yung river mo, no? Instead na mag-curve totally na pag ganyan, no? Dumiretso na siyang pag ganito kasi curve out na ng river mo. So essentially, itong area mo na to na cut off from the rest of the river. Now forming what we call oxbow lake or yung mga bilyabong natin, no? So through time, meron ka pa rin yung river pero yung oxbow lake mo para siyang crescent shape na matitira na separate dun sa river before. Yung mga organism na fish dyan na matatrap, no? Na mga fish na magtatribe pa rin dyan sa oxbow lake na yan. From rainwater na lang yung supply ng nila. So kailangan nila mag-adapt at isolated community na yan. So essentially parang island na yan, no? Na separate from the freshwater river mo kanina. Okay ba tayo doon? So, mga ganun, no? Now, ito din naman, ma-apply mo din ang island biogeography sa tinatawag nating basin range topography. For example, sa Nevada, meron kang mga mountain tops dyan, no? Mga mountain ridges. Meron kang mga basin dito. Essentially, para siyang nag-create ng mga islands, no? Ng mga species na magta-thrive dito ay syempre hindi naman lahat ng species na yan ay kaya mag-thrive at mag-survive dun sa basin. So parang isolated sila dun sa range nila dito, sa range ng sa mountain range topography, no? May mga organism naman na dito lang makikita sa range. So essentially parang in their own merit, nagki-create ng islands. Okay ba? So yeah, yung mga organism na dito lang makikita sa mountain tops, may mga organism ka na makikita lang dito sa basin. So essentially yan ay nagiging islands upon islands upon islands. So ma-apply mo din yung island biogeography dyan. So sa case ng Nevada basin range topography, kung makikita nyo dito, there are species area effects for birds and mammals inhabiting mountain range in the basin and the range provinces. Okay? So meron ka palang makikita ding pattern, no? Na species area effect na kapag in-increase mo yung area ng basin, so pwede mo din pala siya ma-apply sa ganun, no? Hindi lang sa mga islands na meron ka dyan sa Pacific Oceans. Ma-apply mo din pala siya kahit dun mismo na sa malalaking basin and mountain ranges na meron tayo. Ma-apply mo din yan dun sa mga sky islands na meron tayo dito sa Pilipinas. So yeah, the effect of isolation can also be observed on mammals ng mga montane forests, no, habitat islands. So yeah, ito yung case nung sa ating sky islands, no, dun sa mga bundok-bundok natin na meron kang dati dahil nga nagkakaroon ng changes sa vegetation cover, nagkakaroon ka ng isolation, no? So yung mga organism mo dun lang sa taas na bubuhay, yung mga organism mo kaya lang dito, yung iba naman dito lang, no? So parang mayroon kang isolation effect. So ang tawag naman natin doon ay habitat islands na. So yun yung case ng mga sky islands natin, no? Meron kang habitat islands na nakikreate sa mga montane habitat natin. So yeah, yan yung mga case ng island habitats. Ito pa yung mga pinakamagaganda ding example, no? Anthropogenic influences. Ngayon, kung titingnan nyo dito, ngayon, paano mo, Sir Jam, ma-apply yung island biogeography? Wala naman ata dyang island biogeography, sir. Niloloko mo kami. Yan, tingnan nyo kung paano natin na-fragment yung ecosystem natin. So dati, ganito, yung para siyang isang mainland lang dati. But now, na meron tayong palayan dito, agricultural area dito, urbanization area dyan, clearing. So, in their own merit, nagiging isang island yan, nagiging isang island ulit to, isang island ulit to, isang island ulit to. No? Diba? So, para ka nagkakaroon ng smaller and smaller fragments na in their own ay nagiging silang island na meron kang level of isolation. Okay ba? No mga species mo na nandyan. Okay? Ganon din, ma-apply nyo din yan dun sa urban areas natin. Kapag naglagay ka ulit ng mga tawag dito, highways, nafa-fragment mo yung mga areas natin, no? Pag naglagay ka ng mga highways na ganyan. Kaya nung isang study nila sa mammal diversity sa Mount Rainier National Park, they have seen the decrease about 26% from 1920s to 1976 na dahil dun sa fragmentation ng forest habitat na yan. No? So yeah, malaking impact talaga yung anthropogenic causes dito sa ating forest, sa mga national parks din natin. Ngayon, we would like to increase our understanding of island biogeography to try to assist in mainly solving two practical conservation programs. These are the particular areas of interest. Number one, using the theory to predict the effect of anthropogenic habitat fragmentation. Number two, using our knowledge of species area effects on the relaxation of fauna to try and design those what we call nature preserve that will maximize long-term species richness. So, ganito. Gamitin nyo kapag sa exam, pinagawa ko kayo ng conservation effort or conservation management plan. Pwede nyo gamitin ang island biogeography sa pagdi-design ng management proposal for that species. Yung mga naaral natin na dahilan. So kung gusto nyong masabi ko sa inyo, tinanong ko kayo, gusto kong mag-design kayo ng management plan na paparamihin nyo yung species, no? Yung biodiversity ng isang island. Tapos yung island pala na to ay napakalayo dun sa mainland natin, no? So, makakapag-design ba kayo ng maayos na conservation kapag ganon? Syempre hindi. Apply nyo yung theory ng island biogeography. Hindi namin kaya yan, sir, kasi malayo siya dun sa source na mainland natin. Source ng propagule. So, medyo matagal bago siya ma-repopulate. Okay? So, ganun din naman kapag gusto nyong mag-conserve in terms naman ng mga fragmented forest natin dito sa Baguio, no? Meron tayong mangilan-ngilan na lang dyan sa Camp John Hay na mga forest patches. Meron tayo dito sa GSIS Forest Patch. Meron tayo sa BSU, meron pa sila na forest patch. So, paano ka naman magdi-design ng conservation effort para sa kanila? Pwede kang mag-create ng mga corridors kung saan magiging silang connected. Well, ngayon siguro yung mga areas niyan dito sa Baguio, medyo mahirap na kasi puro fragmented na talaga ng daan. So yan, no? Mga ganun. Now, for the last na image, ito lang naman. So, kung gusto nyo matry yung island biogeography simulation, click nyo lang yung sa VLE natin, yung model na yon. This model simulates the MacArthur and Wilson's 1963 Island Biogeography Equilibrium paper. You can run this virtual experiment and manipulate the following areas. Kaya mong i-manipulate yung distance, no, parameter. Yung distance niya from the mainland, no? Kaya nyo i-manipulate yan. Pwede nyo ding manipulate yung size nung island mo. Tapos pwede mo din ma-manipulate kung anong organisms yung magmamigrate. At yung extinction at migration rate ng organism. So ayan, ang cute nila. May mga ibon ka dyan na magmamigrate dun sa island. Tapos pwede mong i-run yung experiment na yan para ma-produce yung results. Makita nyo kung ano yung results later on. So, yeah. Kung gusto nyo lang namang i-try yung experiment na yan, napakadali, napaka-cute din ng virtual biology lab na to. So, yeah, para ma-visualize nyo kung paano nga ba gumagana yung mga parameters natin. At kung wala na kayong tanong, hindi pala kayo makakapagtanong dito kasi video to. Yun lang tayo for today. And thank you for listening. Once again, this is Sir Patrick. Peace out.